they would want to see. I would like to add to that this council have them turn over all reimbursements and receipts for those reimbursements. Lastly, I would like a little clarification on what is the range. I know Cole said it was a unique acronym, but what is it? What does it do? How many jobs does it provide to this company? The job of the EEDC is to bring in businesses that will provide jobs and produce goods and services that will benefit this community. If the range doesn't do this, why are we giving them any money? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adair. As a statement of fact, Neil Gerber should have a preliminary draft of all of the 3-year look back this Friday. So council will be receiving that, looking at that over the weekend, and then next week, hopefully, be in a position to analyze that. He also has taken the reimbursements from the employees, so he'll be able to tell you with supporting documentation what monies were expensed. We don't know that that'll be ready on Friday, but we do know that he's looking into that and a few other things as well. And then we are taking our role in oversight very seriously in this, and we'll continue to walk this out the right way. Thank you, sir.
Mayor, that concludes everyone that signed up.
Okay, do I have anyone else here who'd like to offer public comment before we proceed with our meeting? Okay. Moving on, we'll go ahead and get into our agenda items. Item 3A, public hearing and consideration. So these are all of our PIDs, and so we have Ms. Carrie Roberts here today. So we won't ask you to come up and give a presentation. You did a great job previously in explaining to us again and our public what a PID is, why, how it's housed, what it functions for. Council, if you have any specific questions on any of these items, Ms. Roberts can answer those, but we will go ahead and move forward with these efficiently since this is the second and final reading. So, Council, at this time, are there any questions on any of the PIDs that are noticed here today for Ms. Carey?
No, sir.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move through with the procedural part of this. So item 3A is ready for a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 3A is up for a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against item 3A? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and now call for the motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8157 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from place 2. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item passes with a 4-0 vote. Item 3B, we have this one is the PID for Heritage Hills. Would at this time open a public hearing to see if anyone is here to speak for or against item 3B. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8158 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second on 3B. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move forward to item 3C. Item 3C is the Pinnacle neighborhood and its PID. Do I have anyone here? We will now open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8159 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second on item 3C. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 4-0 vote. Moving along to item 3D. Item 3D is our Point West PID. We will now open a public hearing on this one. Do I have anyone here that would like to speak for or against item 3D? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Would ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8160 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second on item 3D. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 3E, we have our Quail Creek PID. We'll now open a public hearing. Do I have anyone here to speak for or against item 3E? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. Would allow us to move.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8161 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 3F, this is our town square PID. Would now open a public hearing on item 3F. Do I have anyone here who would like to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and would ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8162 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 3F passes. Maybe we should start scheduling our meetings before lunch more often. We seem motivated. We have our Tutbury PID for item 3G. We'll open a public hearing on this item. Do I have anyone here who would like to speak for or against item 3G? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Would ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8163 as presented.
Second.
Once again, a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. On to item 3H is our Vineyards PID. We'll now open a public hearing on item 3H. Do I have anyone here who wants to speak for or against this item? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Would ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8164 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second on 3H. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. I think this is our last one. Item 3I is our Colonies PID. We'll now open a public hearing. Do I have anyone who would like to speak for or against item 3I? Seeing no one, we'll close that public hearing. Would ask for my last motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 8165 as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Roberts, great job on leading us through that. Appreciate you being efficient. Okay, we will move on to item 3J. This considers a resolution. We have, this is our Economic Development Corporation and their budget. And so at this time, I wanted to defer over to Mr. Path and see, Mr. Path, did you want to present suggestions, or would you like to have Mr. Carter maybe go back through what the original budget is in a review?
I'm ready to go if the council would like me to go first, but otherwise, if you'd like to talk from the original, if you'd like to take the original first and then go from there, that may make sense as well.
So I actually do think it would be better to start with you because we are very familiar with the budget and have worked through this one already. I think we would do best in hearing what staff recommendations are first. And then I think we would have Mr. Carter maybe take us back through that, and then he could lend an opinion to what staff's recommendations are. And then also, I'll let you guys know, we have Mr. Hyde on the call here, and he's able to walk us through an alternate that we've been discussing as well.
Absolutely, yes. Mayor, members of council, appreciate the opportunity to come and present this to you. As we discussed at the last council meeting, actually going back a couple of council meetings, the city council was presented the AEDC budget, the original version. We've taken that budget and, of course, we put that into our software. So you have in your packets something that looks similar to this. This is in the city software. That's how we break it down. That's how we show our sheets. So with this, the council discussed different options for how to approve their budget. Of course, obviously, you can approve it as presented by the EDC. You can not approve a budget if you so wish. We did determine that you're not required to approve a budget today before October 1st. You can also approve a budget with conditions. And as staff, we went to work trying to identify some potential conditions should you wish to choose those. But with this City Council, you can choose whatever conditions you wish. You can take what we presented. You can take what Mr. Hyde presented. You can take anything that you so decide. And so that is open to you to decide. So with this City staff, we did look at some options for you to consider. Again, these are just options. This is not what we say you have to do. Just ideas here. In your package, you will see a sheet that looks like this. This is the first page there. It has 4 written out recommendations that we have made. These were the conditions that we verbalized to you at the last meeting. We just put them in writing now. And following that, you'll see the budget sheets there that has you see little blue numbers on the top there, 1s, 2s, 3s, and so forth like that. So we'll be referring to those as we go along. With this, staff and I, we did look at their actual history. We looked at their budget proposals. And so with this, going to number 1, our first suggestion for a possible recommendation for a condition with the budget would be approve the 91100 section, which is their Amarillo Economic Development Operating Budget, as presented, to allow AEDC to continue conducting the day in and day out parts of the business. With this, this is section 91100. See a little number 1 on the top there. This is where you'll find their payroll, their office expenses, their rent for their building, utilities, and so forth. Their budget is about $1.85 million. 76% of that is payroll, and so that's a big chunk of that. The rest of it is just typical office expenses there, I say there. Now with this, looking at their historical figures, what they propose in the budget does seem to trend correctly versus historical numbers there. So I didn't dig any deeper to see whether the budget numbers look good or not, but it does tend to trend in accordance with what they presented. The next recommendation for you to consider is under their account 91110. This is their business development budget. We recommend that you approve this section as presented with no account line item to exceed the approved budget without prior authorization from the council, and no subcategory within each account line, as shown in Exhibit A, to be overspent by 25% or more without prior council authorization. So you will see in your packets, you will see a sheet set like this, list number 2. This is 91110. Then you will see Exhibit A, which is a little more broken out. And so you'll see in the Exhibit A, the far right-hand side, you'll see the account numbers, which you'll see marketing support, $150,000, marketing technology and software, $45,000, all the way down to workforce initiatives of $60,000 for a total of $800,000. Our recommendation for your consideration is those numbers do not change without your approval. If you move to the left there, you see the subcategories. This is where they break those numbers into smaller numbers there. Again, looking at marketing support, you'll see paid media, $35,000, website, $10,000, photography for print and web, $5,000. A lot of these were appears to be typical contractual or office-related expenses. So these ones here, our suggestion is these are allowed to fluctuate by no more than 25% without your approval. That way they have room to maneuver within that total account category. Again, the category will not exceed, but they have room within those items there to adjust if contracts come a little high, a little low. So that is the second recommendation that we've made. And please stop me along the way if you have questions. Moving on, looking at recommendation number 3, this gets to their section. This is account number 91120, which is the TPRDC, or the Texas Panhandle Regional Development Center. These are, again, our operating expenses that are mostly passed through. So we recommend approval of these as presented. Again, those being operational expenses tied to TPRDC. Then lastly, this one's a little more complicated, but most of their, looking at section account number 91200, this is the ADC projects budget. The vast majority of these are tied to contractual expenses, like whether it's industries, things that you've already approved or prior council have approved through contracts. So those numbers should already have set terms to be spent. There are agreements already in place, and so our recommendation are for those that have contracts, those should continue as planned. Again, given this council or prior councils have already authorized those contracts, so we recommend those to proceed as planned. But then there are a few items that are a little bit smaller in number, a little smaller in price. And so if you go to page 3, it says the word page 3 of the proposed EDC budget. And I'll flip to that and I'll show it to you in a second here. So page 3 looks like this. Again, we wrote the word page 3 in the bottom there. You'll see $875,000 of total expenses there. They have itemized those out between Amarillo Chamber of Commerce for $80,000, Ports to Plain $125,000, Team Texas for $40,000, High Ground of Texas membership $25,000, Texas Economic Development Corporation membership $25,000, and then WT Enterprise Center for $580,000. Those ones, just like back in recommendation number 2, those ones would not exceed 25%. So those are our 4 different recommendations. We did try to capture everything with some ideas with this, but again, these are just suggestions, thoughts that you can tweak these, adjust these. Instead of 25, make it 10%, or you can say in every account, come back to us kind of thing. There's lots of options you can choose from, but these are ones that, through our analysis, given our experience with budgets, these are what we recommend for your consideration. I'll take any questions you have.
Questions, council?
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, not really any questions. I just, I think that our job is to put good business practices into place, which there were none. On the city side, there's no checks and balances, which I think we have assurances now that is in place, or that we're going to put those in place. Is that correct?
We are developing those policies. Obviously, I think that's going to come about through after Neil Gerber's research. I think the intent is for council to review that, and then together we develop some potential protocol procedure changes between EDC, council, and staff.
Okay. And then on the other side, just to make sure, I think that's, we mentioned, putting guardrails up to keep us to where we need to be, which it seems like, the public and council, and I think staff as well, was a little shocked, to see what happened and what could happen without any guardrails up. So I think that's our goal. I think as far as further discussion on this, I'm open to, council hearing what other members think of what we need to do and what those guardrails need to look like, because I think according to Texas law, I think they're a lot more stringent than this, actually. So, I think we've got to entertain that as well.
Okay. I think that's a good opening statement and kind of it's leading into where we want to end up. So I think we're on the right path. Councilman Shirley.
On wages and salaries, does that include bonuses?
Yeah, under the section 91100, there is we flip right to that here. There is it PFP? What it is? Yes, pay for performance. Yeah, that section is a category under the personnel services. It would be 41,500 is where that's found. Yes.
Is that legal to give bonuses?
I'm not the best person to answer that question, and so that may be a good legal question.
I think with public funds, I think we need to be sure of that.
I can tell you when it comes to city employees, it's not. And so I can't answer when it comes to nonprofits, AEDC, but I know with city employees, unless it's written out through a contract ahead of time, I'm not aware that we can receive bonuses as city employees, but I can't speak to nonprofits.
The way I look at it is we're using the same taxpayer money, whether it's the city budget or AEDC budget, it's the same, coming out of the same pockets.
Yep.
And I think we need to be sure before we make any obligations to paying bonuses to make sure it is legal and it is right, because I don't want to be held personally responsible. From what I found out, a lot of this stuff, this could come back on council on things that have happened in the past. And I want to be real careful on what we approve and what we don't approve, and that's why I'm asking these questions. It's not that I'm saying I'm against bonuses. I'm not saying that. But to me, it seemed a little, we talked about this even last year, giving bonuses to one part of taxpayer money and not to city employees who work just as hard, if not harder. So I would like us to check that legally.
Yep, we can check into that.
See where we are for sure. There's one other thing they brought up last week. I believe they said if it's over 500,000, that the director and chairman could make the call to have that money transferred. Is that correct?
Under their policy changes, 9.2 says any expenditure that exceeds $500,000 or greater will require the signature of the president, CEO, and the ADC board chair. That's all it says here.
Wouldn't we want the whole board to approve that?
That would be a policy decision for the
I
council.
think, in my opinion, when we just, you're not changing anything if you're allowing two people to do it without a vote of the board. So to me, the board has got to play a part in the doling out of the money. We can't just put it in the hands of two people,
Yes.
because that leads to impropriety. It leads to a lot of things. I honestly believe that whenever they give money, their board needs to be involved in that process.
Yeah, it's my interpretation of 501.073 that the council can set whatever policy you wish to see.
Yeah.
I think for clarification, because we could draw a line and kind of have a point of delineation there. If you've had a project that has a contractual obligation that exceeds $500,000, then it was voted on by the council. It was voted on by their board. Now it's just the issuance of those funds contractually as you work that project forward. So I think it is appropriate for the director and the chair to continue to sign for those as long as they were both adopted or approved by both council and EDC board. I think what you may be referencing would be like in issuance to this wire transfer, it was in excess of $500,000, did not have those authorizations, and had it have been approved by the council and their board, a simple authorization from the director and the chair would suffice?
Correct.
Okay. So if we can draw that delineation, I don't think we're trying to bring everything back for a follow-up vote. So we do want to be careful. Once we've contractually obligated our EDC, then it doesn't do any good to bring it back for an additional vote. We're contracted. So I think we could be doing ourselves harm if we allow ourselves a continued, hey, we want to look at this again. Well, we've already decided. So once those contracts are performance issues, then we want that due diligence. However, those things that haven't been brought in a contract form, I know for sure we're looking at policies. We'll make everything go through both boards. Further questions for Mr. Path?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Carter, if we could get you to join us up here, I think it would be good if you can just take us through a review, maybe previous year's budget and current budget request, and is there any trends there? What else you guys are already doing to try to facilitate good communication between your board and our board, and anything else you'd like to lend to the conversation here today?
Yeah, I think I can speak to what was just said about the 500,000. I think that 9.1 would take care of 9.2, because it would say anything over the 50,000 would have to be board and council approved, and so then that's where that 500,000 would come in. That doesn't come into play, but maybe once or twice a year, that 500,000. Typically, it's happened with Texas Tech's payment that we've made over the last few years, and then a couple of incentive payments that's been contractually obligated. But we thought that 9.1 would take care of what Councilmember Sherlin just asked, but we can certainly add that statement in with that 9.2 if we need to.
Okay. If you want to jump into your budget request, anything you want to educate us further on and how you're breaking that budget down?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to do just a little bit. I think last week there might have been some questions on what TPRDC is, and so if you'll give me a couple of minutes to explain what TPRDC is, that's the Texas Panhandle Regional Development Corporation. We took that in-house in 2011. It had been housed at the Panhandle Regional Planning Commission before that. It's the SBA 504 program, so a lot of that, it's a self-sustaining organization. It just has to have a sponsoring organization, and so AEDC is the sponsoring organization for that. It's fully funded, and that's why it's just pass-through money. So kind of wanted to explain that to the public. What that does is it acts as a lending arm for small business. With the 504 program, it works with local banks. They have to have a local bank loan first, and then the 504 comes in and steps in to pay, I believe, will pay up to 40% of a loan. So, and so kind of want to just explain what TPRDC is. Those are all just pass-through monies. I'm willing to work off of this, the city's look or the traditional AEDC look. Y'all let me know which one you want to work off of.
Council, do you have a preference on which one he walks us through?
I don't have a preference at all, no.
Whichever one you're more comfortable, we can
Okay.
follow either one.
Okay, all right, I'm going to work off the AEDC one. There's 3 years of history here, and this is, I'm going to start with that, just kind of that cover sheet that's kind of about half a page that shows the administrative. I think that one's it. Yeah, Stephanie, thank you. We're looking at budgeting this year, personnel about $1.6 million. That's a 2% increase, not including myself, that we took. That was on city's guidance that every employee was going to get a 2% cost of living adjustment. Operations, we actually went down a little bit compared to last year. So our total administrative budget's around $2 million. We left the marketing budget the same. It's been around $800,000 the last 3 years. So total admin and marketing of about $2.88 million. That does include TPRDC. And then our project support is $875 this year. It was $675 last year, $875. That includes putting $200,000 back into the budget for the Enterprise Challenge. Really not a lot of increase. I think benefits went up 2%, so that's some of the cost that we had, and a lot of that has to do with the TMRS, I believe, isn't that right, is the main reason there was an increase in the benefit cost. And then also, obviously, insurance and healthcare costs are rising. Operation budget stayed pretty much the same. We may have moved some of those numbers up and down, but I think 439 is the exact same number as we used last year. And then, like I said, on project support, our marketing, $800,000, that stayed the same. That's been that way for 3 years at least. And then project support, those numbers are exactly the same except for the Enterprise Center. So total AEDC budget of $3.762 million. Certainly be willing to answer any questions.
Anything specific on these line items, gentlemen?
Just on the operations side, Kevin, are all those true estimates, or are those just all rounded up numbers?
That goes back to the city?
No, on your.
No, on yours.
Yeah, are those accurate numbers, or are those just rounded off
They're gonna
budgetary
be,
items?
we tried to make those fairly accurate. We know what our rent payment is. Obviously, we can't always, we know what the fiscal agent fee is. Insurance fluctuates a little bit, and then professional services fluctuates a little bit. And so, but those are going to be fairly close
Okay.
this year.
Any questions, gentlemen?
That's all I've got.
Go ahead and keep going through the rest of it, whatever else you've got, and then we'll.
I think that's it.
So you're good. Was there anything else that you wanted to speak on here today, and maybe your board or the other changes? Are those functional for you guys?
With what city manager proposed?
I think the
I
curiosity
think that we
would be
certainly can live within those boundaries, and we
okay.
should.
So anything that city manager is proposing doesn't cause you guys a hardship in doing business?
No, sir.
Okay, and everything that your board has proposed came from you guys as staff and board collaborating together?
That's correct. And I
Okay.
appreciate Grayson and Laura working with us on this and preparing and asking questions. And so certainly appreciate the work that they did.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter. We're going to keep you around here for a minute. I know you're not going anywhere, but we may have a follow-up question.
Absolutely.
But I think at this time, I'm going to direct our conversation to a topic that is the elephant in the room. And so we haven't necessarily put our finger on it quite as finite as we're going to here today. So we have Mr. Hyde here from Hyde Kelly, truly like an outstanding resource around the state in helping us navigate this. And so what I want to do is I want to draw a line or a definition between budget and expenditure. And so where we've been struggling with this is we've been given a budget, and we're asking to approve the budget. And then as you can see with policies and procedures, we don't necessarily have expenditures that are coming back for formalized approvals. So we are saying, well, a budget is an approval. Well, it could be in the way in which we move it forward. However, in the recent transaction with the range, that's an obvious example of how a budget item at $100,000 got expensed at $750,000. So where was the approval of that specific expenditure? Now, moving back to the definition and the terms, I think that even budget items that are allowed for what you guys, I've heard the EDC say, well, we have a discretionary budget or we have a discretionary item. Truly, we don't right now, and I don't know that you have had that. But, Mr. Hyde, I think what I'd like to do is start off with you educating us on what the state law, says pretty black and white, what a budget can be, and then how do we facilitate, I would call them pre-approved expenditures for the year going forward so that we do restore that confidence in our public trust in where all the monies are going and how they're being noticed to the public. So I'll turn it over to you if you want to walk us through that for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me all right?
You're good.
Yes, sir.
Great. So first of all, 501073A is the local government code provision which we've been discussing, which requires the city council as the authorizing unit to approve all expenditures. That's the first phrase of that statute. The statute goes on and says that in addition to that the city council will review, not approve, but review annually the financial statements of the local government the Economic Development Corporation. And so in doing so, the budget portion is a financial document which is to be annually reviewed by the city council by letter of the law, and that an expenditure, which is different than a financial document, is also must be approved. This is not unlike a number of other governmental entities, such as Potter County or other counties, all 254 in Texas, where every month their bills to be paid has to be approved by the county commissioner's court. Every check has to be approved. So there are mechanisms that we can use in order to provide a line item budget process, and that each line item identifies the allocation or expenditure. So for instance, instead of having salaries item, you would have the number of employees that have been approved and the related salaries and benefits associated with that cost by the individual. That way you have a clear understanding of why those funds are supposed to be spent and how those are going to be spent. In that case, you would be able to identify those as a pre-approved budget item, because the approval of the budget can also be by specific express statements by the city council, the approval of the expenditure. Now, when you get to other items, there can be a requirements or other elements of the Articles of Incorporation where you can put in principles which are cost savings principles. For instance, say that there is a need for fuel, and fuel has to be bid by the government. The more fuel, typically, the less per gallon it's cost the city. And so if the Articles of Incorporation required the Economic Development Corporation to receive fuel from, and participate in the city's fuel contract, then that would be another mechanism by which you can relate or narrow the allocations to ensure that the public funds are being spent properly and conservatively. Second, just for the question that Councilmember Shirley made earlier, actually, this is kind of a twofold question with regards to bonuses. Bonuses are typically allowed by non-governmental entities in that those bonuses are part of profits. In a non-profit corporation, providing bonuses especially in an economic development corporation where the funds are tax funds, would possibly be allowed, but for the fact that this expenditure for bonus has to be approved by the city council. The Texas Constitution, Article 52, provides that you cannot approve funds to be used as a gift. Gifting public money is unconstitutional in Texas, and therefore your action that would approve a budget item that would allow for bonuses to be provided by the Economic Development Corporation would be contrary to Article 52 of the Constitution. So while normally a nonprofit corporation could do it, because the Economic Development Corporation is what we call a quasi-governmental entity, it has certain elements of the government. It is in a position where it's constrained from a financial standpoint the same way the city is. If your approval was not necessary, then it may change the outcome. So here, and in other economic development corporations where they've had some issues that I've worked with all the way back to 2010, when you develop this greater specificity in the budget, it requires a greater deal of thought and forward thinking by the economic development group so that they can have a plan and then execute that plan for the city. The performance agreements, which is a different section of the Economic Development Corporation rules, provides that the governing body has to also approve those performance agreements. So the incentives have two elements of approval. You have to approve the agreement and you have to approve the expenditure. But when it's not a economic development project and the expenditures are such that are not in conflict with Chapter 501 or the other applicable chapters of the local government corporation, Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation, by statute, operates as a nonprofit corporation under Chapter 22 of the Business Organizations Code. And so it is that combination that creates a little bit of murkiness in the manner in which these get done. But we clarify that by adopting in the Articles of Incorporation, which demonstrate, because the council's action for purposes of overseeing the expenditure of public funds, by creating a mandatory process by which those funds are identified, how the expenditures are identified, and then ultimately how they're spent. An example that is, it's kind of wide out there, but these are the kind of concerns that ultimately occur when expenditures are not specifically identified. In that, say, for instance, that you have a membership fee that you authorize for memberships of the organization, and that membership fee is $100,000. Now, this is only a drastic example, but if that $100,000 was given to an individual that had the ability and discretion to spend that $100,000, they may spend it on the Chamber of Commerce, or they may spend it to join the KKK, because the expenditure, the budget does not control that. They would have to come to the city council and say, City Council, we want to join the chamber, or we want to join this, and this is how much it costs to join. And then the City Council then has the ultimate authority to decide whether those tax dollars are appropriately paid that way. I'll conclude generally with that the expenditure under 073A is specifically there because it's required under our system of government. Our system of government requires that elected officials are the ones that ultimately approve the expenditure of tax dollars. Without the public officials having a hand in it, and if a delegated board is the one that, or an individual has the ability to spend public money without check, then we have taxation without representation. And that's the fundamental basis upon which 073A rests.
So let me jump in there with you real quick. Mr. Hyde, I should have done this earlier. You have an extensive background in working with EDCs across the state of Texas, and tell us just a little bit, brief history, and maybe what you've worked through with the state, some of your history and experience.
Sure. So I started out as a law enforcement officer for several years, and then I went to law school and became an attorney and immediately started working with local government, principally municipalities. I'm a certified claims counsel by the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool. I have been for over 20 years, where I'm assigned by the pool in order to litigate matters and defend municipalities in lawsuits. I've also been involved in economic development since 2003. That was right before they made a significant change in the law in 2004, which significantly curtailed some abuses that were going on in the first run of the economic development statutes. From then, I've been regularly taking the TEDC, the Economic Development Corporation courses, as I'm a city attorney, have been a city attorney in more than a dozen cities across Texas in the 26 years that I've been doing this. Additionally, I've been called upon by several municipalities when I call it an EDC goes astray, and there are some protocols that have been missed. I've had to deal with federal investigations. I've had to deal with Texas Ranger investigations because the funds are ultimately tax funds, and the work has been very challenging, but at the same time rewarding when we're able to get proper protocols in place so that the city and the Economic Development Corporation can continue to rebuild its trust with the citizens it serves.
So thank you for that. I should have started there, but I think we were just moving right along. You said several things here, and then I'll let council ask any questions that they have and follow up. But, you know, I'm not sure that our EDC board is approving the expenditures individually. You had talked about like the commissioners for, say, Potter County. You know, they approve individual expenditures every month. Mr. Carter, does your board approve your expenditures every month, or can you speak to that? And is there a board that is approving those expenses as they come in on a monthly basis?
They are not.
Okay, so how are you functioning then on like the overall budget? You just keep a running tally underneath that line item, and if you exceed that, then you address your board?
So what happens, every month we get financial statements from the city. The city prepares, we pay $75,000 for the city to be our fiscal agent. Laura and a couple of staff members come and meet with Doug and myself, Doug Nelson, every month. We review those financials to make sure that we're in line with those where we need to be, and that's where we know whether we're going to be over budget or we're not going to be over budget.
So once again, drawing a line and making a clear distinction between approved budget versus approved expenditures. You guys are operating, be it not specific underneath a policy, but you are operating under a budget approval. Once you get budget approval from council, you as the director and your staff are issuing approvals just, you know, internally without anything ever coming back to your board.
That's correct. Yes,
okay. So, Mr. Hyde, thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Hyde, if you could walk us to that next step. I heard you say a few things. It sounded like you were talking about, you know, amending articles of incorporation in order to put something, not like a bylaw or a policy, but put something in place that draws that delineation. Am I trying to make this too simple, or can we keep going down this track of what I think is, I liked the term you used, greater specificity. So in doing a pre-approved budget, you're going to have to be more specific on these line items. You're going to get an approval for the year. Council would approve that. Their board would approve that. Then we would know in advance what those monies were going out for. Then you would have a review annually by this council to see, did they actually pay XYZ or did they make a change? And so if they were to make a change, you would expect that under this amendment in their articles to come back to this council. We would like to pay ABC, not XYZ. Can we do that? Then that approval would happen. To walk us through that and tighten that up a little, because I don't know that we're explaining it as well as I would hope to in what your potential recommendation would be.
Yes, sir. I'll use an analogy with regard to civil service. For instance, when you have a civil service, as police department, fire, EMS, you have classified positions, and those classified positions are paid a certain amount of money, and those classified positions can't change. So if you have 15 openings, those 15 openings get filled, and then if there's a vacancy, that vacancy stays open. It's not that you spend the money on something else. And so without line item transfers, it creates more specificity with regards to the authority and approval of the funds. Otherwise, if there is no restriction on line item transfers, then what you've really done is passed a single amount of money that can be allocated to whatever allocations they later decide to do so. There was another question or comment earlier that I want to point out, is that technically, in order for the board to enter into an agreement, just like the city, there has to be a majority vote of that board. And so if there's a contract that is put in place without a majority vote of the board approving that contract and authorizing the executive director to execute that contract, then that contract has failed to meet the legal requirements of the approval, the very approval itself. And if the funds for that contract were not approved by this body, under 073A, then you have an illegality, which is a method by which a contract can be canceled without any obligation, because illegal contracts are void ab initio, as the state law provides. So these are the reasons why these are all put in place, so that we don't get into situations where one individual can sign a contract for $1 million and then start paying those tax dollars without the board approving and with the city council. But the city council itself has the unique and sole authority to adopt its articles of incorporation. So in those, you simply identify that line item budget, and in the past I've used color coding, I've used allocations of routine versus transactional. So anything that is a routine, like an annual salary of an individual, the number of positions that are there, et cetera, you can mark all those, and then when the budget comes forward, you identify and include language in the budget document that says that the items listed here that are annotated with a green highlight or the letter R are hereby, those expenditures are approved by the city council. All other expenditures or all other budget items here are not approved as expenditures and must come before the city council before they're spent. And then that way, everybody has a very clear understanding of what is and what isn't approved. And then those pots of money, the $800,000 of marketing, the X thousands of dollars, and here as a business, I did the same thing with, subscriptions. Everybody has Microsoft or some other type of piece like that. You just line those up like you do on a balance sheet and a expense document, and you've got your budget for the next year, looking at your last year's budget.
Mr. Hyde, I think that's a good explanation. I want to ask a specific question, and I saw Councilman Kraft lean up, so he may have something to jump into. But in doing business this way, it's greater specificity, but do you see that this causes a hardship in function? Is it simple enough to continue doing business in a good business-like manner, and we wouldn't be slowing down the process or preventing economic development in town in any way?
Yeah, it's very. You just have to put it in place and then adopt it. And once you have it in place, it becomes rather routine. Many cities throughout the state run on line item budgets, and as I mentioned before, I think there were 34 pages of Potter County expenditures that were approved for $3.7 million on September 19th or of this month. I think it was the 19th. So they do multi-million dollars of transaction each month by line item. So I think that the Economic Development Corporation would have an easier go than the constitutional requirements of the county.
Councilman Kraft, I saw you may have a question.
George, I just have a couple clarifying questions. So just to be clear, all expenditures is all expenditures. So the $50,000 policy that was brought to us last council meeting is void, correct?
It does not. It's not consistent with state law, and state law cannot be amended by policy. And so I would caution the city council on adopting anything that is contrary to or to state law.
Okay. How long would it take to amend articles of incorporation and get more solidified, identified things in there?
I think that 7 to 10 days is, I can put these together and look at the materials. I'd like to work with the Economic Development Corporation so that we can do this collaboratively to ensure that all of their concerns are addressed. And then once that's done, bring it back to the City Council for their consideration.
Okay. That's only two questions I had. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Tips, you have anything for our attorney?
I do not.
Councilman Sherlin?
I'd like a clarification on the bonus issue. Is it legal or is it not?
Well, because the bonus would be part of the salary allocation in the budget, you cannot legally approve those funds for purposes of a bonus. And so my recommendation would be that the City Council not authorize the use of tax dollars for bonuses for the Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councilman Sherlin?
Not right this time.
Okay. So, gentlemen, speaking to my counsel, I'm steering us in a direction that it's obvious that this is not my idea. I don't have the expertise or the wherewithal to formulate this. Mr. Hyde, you've had me on the phone several times. It may have taken a few weeks for it to finally click for me to understand approval of a budget is not approval of expenditures, and that we truly were not operating consistent with state law in how those expenditures are being approved. Now, in this 3-year financial review that we're going to get, I think, according to what I'm hearing Mr. Gerber say, as it pertains to projects that there is supporting documentation, they are doing everything correct. I think it's isolating those project support, business development, marketing, those other expenditures. So I know that this could look a little rigid, but I think it is good form and good business practice. I'm going to ask my counsel here in a minute. I think this initiative would fall on you, and we would task you with this as the body. I'm going to go back to what does the law not allow us to pay for, and does the EDC need to get a proposal from you for how much this would cost, and does the EDC need to approve this initiative for you to amend the articles, or is that something we can do within our budget?
Because the Economic Development Corporation does not have any voting or approval powers for articles of incorporation, it's purely the City Council. And so it would be a City Council task for me to adopt these or prepare these for the City Council's approval.
Okay. So within our budget, we have the funding there to continue to work with you. You're already hired formally Would it benefit you to give us a formal proposal so we would have an understanding of what this would cost? Is that something you can guesstimate here today, or is that something you would need to get back to us on?
It's not going to be like a $10,000 expenditure. I'm sure it'll be less than that. But to have a precise number, probably somewhere between $5,000 and maybe $7,500 is my guesstimate right now.
Okay, so I would ask council if you guys want to have any discussion on this. I'm not trying to get you 3 steps down the road. One, do we like this plan? Is this a safe way to proceed? 2, would we want to initiate this over to Hyde Kelly? And then we could go to the monetary expense and, maybe going ahead and approving a not to exceed amount.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. As far as their budget today, I know their bylaw state we have to adopt their budget, but I know state law says it doesn't. What would be your recommendation as far as this budget that was presented us today, George? Do we, like salaries and operations, and then everything else comes to council or the salaries and operations as a pre-approval today until we can get all the articles back?
Wouldn't we want
Well,
to?
Go ahead, George, then we'll come back to Councilman Sherlin.
Okay. I was going to say it reminds me of what's going on with our federal government right now with the impending shutdown. Obviously, the Economic Development Corporation needs to be able to pay its expenses and its overheads and any obligations that it has under current contracts, including the funding of employees' costs. I think that those are all something that would be appropriate to approve at this point. And then when we get this budget done in a line item format, we could bring that back and have you approve the amended budget, and then that would be in place for everything else.
Okay.
Further questions, Councilman?
No.
Okay. Councilman Sherlin, what was your question?
When we said salaries, that would exclude bonuses, correct?
That would just be continued monthly salary.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you guys say is well, go ahead, Councilman Tibbs.
Well, I would just say, from his recommendation, what we're saying, it appears that, and this has been a highly educational experience, it appears we've been operating outside of what state law permits. So, I would be in agreement with George's firm to draw those up. I have no problem with that.
Okay. So for all of us to understand, we're not talking about amending a bylaw or working with the EDC board to collaborate this. What we are now doing is we're turning this over to the Hyde Kelly firm and asking them to amend the articles of incorporation in order to be more consistent with state law business practices, so that we, council, then would have a practice of pre-authorizing, pre-approving expenditures that are going to happen that we know about. Then additional expenditures that come back to this council body. So any further discussion on that direction? Otherwise, I think I'm in favor of that, would like to move us down that road.
I'm in favor of that.
Same.
Okay. So I would say the next step in that would be we could here go ahead today and approve a budget, a temporary form of a budget that authorizes payroll, operations, and any contractual obligation. Is that correct, Mr. Hyde?
Yes, I would just put it in the form of a motion to approve the budget to the extent and identify those areas that you are approving.
So I'm going to ask here in a minute for that motion, but before we do that, I would like to give direction to you from this council in the initiative and the task to go and amend these articles. Bring everything back to council as soon as you have it ready, so that we can move the EDC forward at a cost not to exceed $10,000. Is that agreeable to
Sure.
you? Okay, is that agreeable, council?
Yes, sir.
We don't need a motion on that because it's not anything that we have to accept or approve as a contract since you're already facilitating as our legal counsel. I think we're going a good direction. And then I still want the public to hear us say, we're expecting a financial review to come back Friday. We will gladly update the public, and then we will release all information to the public as it's your money. If there's anything there that has to be redacted, it would be very minimal, and it would only be to protect certain, private name or interest of some sort. So I don't know that will even exist, but I want to communicate to you guys that internal auditor is still working diligently on this. It will come back to the public, and then we will still continue to take any corrective measures that are needed. So we are looking at this as two separate issues. One issue is their budget and how healthy how healthily we can contribute to our EDC. And in our correct oversight of that body, we would like some greater specificity in their budget requirements and how they operate. Outside of that, we have an issuance that I have called unlawful because I think that is the most accurate description of what happened. Be it illegal or not, it was unlawful. And we will move forward on that issue separately, and we will still continue to take whatever corrective measures needed there. Councilman Sherlin, I see you up on the mic.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, would it be good for Mr. Gerber when we get that information to forward that to Mr. Hyde as well?
So I would not ask UNEIL to do any of that. I would expect that to come through Mr. Path. So UNEIL will send that to our city manager, and then after we've received it, any of us can hand that over to Mr. Hyde. If you feel like his expertise will help you in evaluating that financial review, you are by all means able to utilize him as a resource.
Okay, thank you.
Anything on this side of the council?
No, sir.
Do I have a council member that's prepared to make a motion?
To be clear, the three areas, you said salaries, contractual obligations, and operating expenses. Is that correct?
Correct. And to, go ahead, Mr. Hyde.
Authorize the expenditure. Since you're approving that portion of the budget and authorizing those expenditures.
Mr. Hyde, just so we can make sure we get everything legally correct, what would be a good form to present that motion in?
Well, I mean, to be the most specific would be a resolution. I don't know that you have one prepared now, but if you make a motion to authorize only those expenditures for operation and personnel and existing contractual obligations to the extent necessary until we come back with the next amended budget through the Articles of Incorporation.
So we do have item 3J that is a resolution, and it considered a resolution knowing that we were going to have a recommendation from you, potential counsel, as well as Mr. Path. With this resolution, council, I think it would be good to approve this or accept this resolution, and then, or I should say adopt this resolution, and then to add in the verbiage of those three line items. Do I have anything I'm missing there, Mr. Hyde?
No, sir. I think that would be fine. It would just need to be modified before you sign it if it's approved.
Very good. So, Mr. Path, I want to make sure that I'm directing staff well. We are prepared to adopt a resolution with these additional expenditures formally to be written down in a way in which you guys would bring it back for signature. Anything you need to add to that? Or are you comfortable moving forward that way? Okay, great. Council would entertain a motion on this.
Okay, I'm going to make a go of it. I make a motion to adopt Resolution 093024-1, amended to only include expenditures necessary for salaries, contractual obligations, and operating expenses.
Second.
Very well done. We have a motion and a second on item 3J. Any further discussion on this guy?
No, sir.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with a 4-0 vote. Mr. Hyde, greatly appreciate your expertise, your time, and your involvement with this council. Thank you for being part of this meeting. We'll let you jump off.
Thanks, George.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Have a great day. Thank you. We're going to move forward to item 3K. Mitch Norman, are you ready to present this one, sir? Okay, if you'll come up here, we have an award for, I believe, a 1 year, but you can walk us through that for our pharmacy benefit manager.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So we are presenting the council for consideration an option to renew our services with Maxor. That's our prescription benefit manager. We are recommending to council a contract for a 1 year renewal for plan year 25. I have with me Ty Petty, who's our consultant from Hub International, to speak more to the details of the negotiation and the terms of the agreement that we have come to that's been presented to you all for consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be back with you today.
Afternoon.
Appreciate you all having me in town. My second time in Amarillo, so thank you. Can I get the next slide, please? Or do I have the clicker? Perfect. Thank you. Oh, thank you. No, it was tucked up under here. Appreciate it. So what I'll briefly do today is we're going to run through a very brief recap of the renewal process that we went through in the negotiation. And then I'm going to update you on some of the key contract updates and then kind of see what our next steps are from there. So if you'll recall, we were tasked on the meeting on 13 August to go back to Maxor and renegotiate the deal that the city has with them. And so we began that initial agreement. Again, appreciate council's vision and leadership on that for us and providing us clear guidance. It makes it easier as your consultant when we have your goals direct from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So really appreciate that. You also formed a benefits committee, and we met on the 4th of September and further clarified and refined that guidance. And that enabled us at Hub to go back to Maxor and press them a little harder in the negotiations. Once Maxor provided Hub with their best and final offer, we ran that through our analysis, and we believe that it's a really good deal for the city, all things considered, and moved Maxor more in line to what is out in the larger marketplace as far as pharmacy benefit managers are concerned. So overall, this new contract amendment begins January 1st, but certain provisions take place, start tomorrow, October 1st, pending approval by the council, and I'll get into the details of that here in a second. So these are the key highlights of it, and I apologize, the slide's a little small. As you can see, on the cost impact side, which was a big driver for the city, we were able to increase the average wholesale price discount amounts across all categories. Hub also was able to negotiate a increased rebate amount across all the different rebate categories as well. We also renegotiated under your current deal. The city was only receiving about 80% of the rebate funds. We negotiated that to 100% rebate pass-through to the city from Maxor. We also did some contract design changes, and that's that 10/1 effective date that I was talking about. That's when your new rebates and discount percentages go into effect upon approval, would be starting tomorrow. That also included, we negotiated an extra rebate payment. And that's part of the new timeline. As you can see, you get rebate payments 60 days after a quarter. Under your current contract, it's 180 days after the close of quarter. So realistically, you're only getting about one rebate payment per year. Now you'll get them 60 days after the close of quarter. So when this new pricing takes effect, we'll expect your first rebate payment to come in sometime in February or early March next year. That will enable us to start evaluating the true impact of these changes across the board. Finally, we changed some strategy. We convinced Maxor to come in line with what we're seeing across the larger PBMs in terms of a Humira and biosimilar conversion program, which the city will roll out on 1/1. Humira is one of your largest cost drugs. All the other major PBMs in the marketplace have adopted biosimilar strategies to try to control those costs to their members. So Maxor's agreed to that. We also negotiated the amendments to go in 1 year terms, providing the city with a 90-day out. So That way, as HUB goes through and evaluates the contract and evaluates the plan performance, the city has the option with 90 days notice to terminate the contract with Maxar and move to another PBM. So looking forward, I'll have to caveat this statement. We're going to monitor the performance, but we estimate that the city could realize between 2.1 and 1.8 million in savings. My caveat to that is when we do this exercise for repricing, we take the new discounts and we run them through your past year of claims. But pharmacy is a very dynamic creature. It depends on your utilization. It depends on what manufacturers do with rebates. It depends on your high-cost claimants. There's a lot of factors that go in. So that's why we have that range. But when we put these new numbers in, repriced your previous year of claims, those were the numbers that we came up with. So we'll continue to compare this contract against industry benchmarks as they come out and as the year moves forward. We'll also continue to work with the Benefits Committee to identify additional opportunities and update them as we start to see these rebate payments roll in and we continue our analyzation. And again, I appreciate Councilman Sherlin and Tips. I appreciate y'all taking the time to meet with us on that Benefits Committee as well. I know those aren't the most entertaining calls talking pharmacy, but really appreciate y'all weighing in on that. And at this time, that's all I have, pending any questions from council.
Hey, I think we enjoy working with you guys. I think we're working more efficiently and effectively.
Yes,
we
sir.
greatly appreciate this benefit to our organization in how all of these monies in this budget help the entire organization, not just a select few. So thank you to the subcommittee for digging in, and then I want to encourage you to continue presenting those ideas for cost savings and bringing us ideas for improving our health benefits.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
your time.
And I'll point out, I appreciate you guys. They did bring forth an offer. They did talk to Maxor. They brought forth an offer. We weren't really comfortable where it was. We felt like that there was some ground to be made up. They went back, probably not super comfortable presenting what we put forth, but they did bridge that gap because there was still a little bit of savings with the interlocal agreement and that type deal. So we put them in a tough spot. They went back, negotiated hard, and came back with exactly what we wanted. So great job.
No, thank you. And I'd be remiss to say, Maxar was a good partner in all this too. They negotiated in good faith with us, and so certainly want to recognize their efforts. And to your point, Councilman Tips, we were able to get that additional 2% on the specialty pricing, which moved the needle forward. So thank you for that guidance as well.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you guys have any questions for Mr. Norman?
No, appreciate you guys. Thank you. And thanks, Tom and Don, for y'all's hard work on that committee.
Okay, gentlemen. This item's ready.
Make sure I say this right. I move to award contract for pharmacy benefit manager services for a one-year period to Maxar Plus Ltd.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second on item 3K. Any further discussion on this one? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. Gentlemen, any reason we don't need to adjourn? Thank you for everyone and your time being here with us today. You're adjourned.